Believe it or not, chopsticks were not always used at the dinner table, and in some places, they had uses that had nothing to do with food. In fact, if events had been even slightly different, there's a very real chance that the fork and knife could have become dominant in Asia. However, thanks to natural catastrophes, ideological shifts, and human conquest, the chopstick has earned its place among the cutlery elite. If you walk into an Asian restaurant, 99 times out of 10, you'll be confronted with a pair of chopsticks. While well-loved by one half of the world, they've largely been shunned by the other, who instead prefer to use their trusty forks, spoons, and knives. This got us wondering, how exactly did chopsticks come about? So today, we took a look back at their fascinating origin story. But before we begin, if you're fascinated in history, you may also be interested in providing us with a little bit of extra support. If you're interested in early access to videos and live chats with the creator of Intrigued Mind, consider subscribing to our Patreon. Your support will greatly help us keep the channel producing more intriguing content. Now, while experts agree that chopsticks are ancient, exactly when they came about isn't all that clear. While the California Academy of Science reckons that chopsticks were developed about 5,000 years ago, most experts agree that they're at least 3,200 years old. That's because a 3,200-year-old set was found in a tomb in Henan province, and from there, it is believed that chopsticks slowly spread across the continent. By 500 AD, chopsticks had become popular in Japan, Vietnam, and Korea, and from then on, they have remained a staple in Asian culture. Now, we should make it clear that at first, the chopsticks didn't see much use on the dining table. It is believed that their earliest use was not with finished food, but with food that was still being cooked. You see, in Asian cuisine, it was common to boil food in deep pots. Since chopsticks could reach deep into these super hot pots, they made the perfect utensil for cooks trying to retrieve their food. At the table, chopsticks, or any other utensil for that matter, were really not in use. Instead, the honor of eating was reserved for the hands and knife. While this may sound like a potentially bloody combination, it was common practice for both commoners and nobles alike to hold food with one hand and cut into it with the other, creating messy but easy-to-eat bites. In an alternate reality, this simple way of eating may have never changed. However, two major events in China helped dinner table chopsticks to quickly become mainstream. The first was a population explosion in 400 AD. This was significant because it caused resources to become scarce, so scarce in fact that cooks had to become crafty. In order to conserve oil, many realized that if they cut large pieces of meat and veggies into small chunks, they would cook them up far quicker than they ever could whole. These small chunks eliminated the need for knives at the dinner table. However, what they did do was make chopsticks a practical option for picking up food. It was because of this that the groundwork was laid for the chopstick explosion. However, we say groundwork because there was one important man that really pushed the chopstick agenda: Confucius. You see, as a vegetarian, Confucius believed that sharp utensils at the dinner table would remind eaters of the slaughterhouse. Taking it one step further, as a pacifist, he believed that the sharp point on knives evoked images of violence and warfare, killing the happy, content mood that he believed should reign during meals. In fact, in one of his many quotes, he went so far as to say that, quote, "The honorable and upright man keeps well away from both the slaughterhouse and the kitchen, and he allows no knives on his table." And while some may argue that this teaching might be a bit exaggerated, it nonetheless quickly caught on. However, this story does not consider one important X factor: rice. At first glance, rice seems like the sworn enemy of chopsticks. After all, its tiny grains can make any attempts to pick it up seem rather pointless. However, unlike the hard-to-pick-up long-grain rice used across Europe, small to medium-grain Asian rice has one special superpower: it sticks together in clumps. As a result, it was super easy to pick up in balls with chopsticks, making these utensils the perfect way to eat Asian cuisine. In a perfect world, this match made in heaven should have made chopsticks the primary utensil in Asian cuisine. However, chopsticks wouldn't achieve true supremacy until the 10th century AD. This is because chopsticks had one more challenger: millet. For those of you who are unaware, millet is a grain that cooks in a mushed way that is similar to porridge. Until the 10th century AD, it was millet and not rice that was the #1 most popular grain in North China, Korea, and parts of Japan. Now, when cooking millet, its many small grains means that you have to cook them like porridge or gruel. If you were to cook them like rice, that is, by bringing them to a boil and then simmering until soft and fluffy, the millet grains at the bottom of the pot would burn, while those in the middle would have remained undercooked. As a result, millet had to be cooked in a decidedly un-rice-like way, and the mush that came as a result meant that the spoon was the utensil of choice for eating it. So this begs the question: what changed? Well, you see, in about 200 BC, One other major force made the move towards rice all that bit quicker: the Han Dynasty. Hailing from northern China, their region's lack of fertilizer or good soil meant that rice was nearly impossible to grow. However, because millet could survive in these harsh conditions, it was the grain of choice. When the Han began to expand southward, they conquered areas that were wet and perfectly suited for growing rice. So perfectly suited, in fact, that they made far more than they needed, and the Han began to ship their extra rice up to the north for a profit. Over time, this empire's creation of a foodway between the south and north of China made rice a common dish in the north, and once this occurred, it was possible for rice and the chopsticks used to eat them to make their way northwards. Now, no history of chopsticks would be complete without talking about the way these top-tier utensils were made. As you might expect, not all chopsticks were created equal. Rather, different cultures adopted different chopstick styles, and the reasons behind this were plentiful. For example, in what many believe is a nod to our old friend Confucius, Chinese chopsticks are blunt rather than pointed at the end, making them very clearly unwarlike. To this day, they are longer and wider than their Japanese or Korean counterparts, which makes them better suited for taking food from shared bowls, as is common in Chinese cuisine. While Western all-you-can-eat sushi places may paint a different picture, in Japan, it is far more common for your dining experience to be an individual experience. In other words, there is no sharing of food. As a result, Japan has developed a love of shorter chopsticks, with further differences existing between women's and men's chopsticks, with the former being even smaller than the latter. In a rather strange twist, it's also worth mentioning that in the early days, chopsticks were only used in religious ceremonies. However, this convention ended long ago, and today, chopsticks are widespread in Japan. Korean chopsticks have an entirely different design. Generally speaking, they are far flatter than Chinese or Japanese chopsticks, are rectangular at the end, and are far more likely to be made of metal rather than bamboo or plastic. The reasons for this are numerous. For one, being made of metal makes chopsticks easier to clean, creating a more hygienic experience. However, perhaps more importantly, Koreans eat a lot of soups in their cuisine and generally use spoons to eat both soup and rice. As a result, the type of chopsticks that are necessary is far different. Beyond cultural differences, the one other characteristic that distinguishes some chopsticks from others is an age-old one: class. Traditionally, chopsticks made of bamboo have been the most accessible, and while they must be disposed of with every use, they do have some important benefits. Beyond being inexpensive, they're heat-resistant and have no particular taste or odor, making them the perfect utensil. Wood is also a popular choice. Woods of choice are generally cedar, sandalwood, teak, and pine. However, they are susceptible to damage. As a result, they are often covered in lacquer in order to waterproof them, while also protecting them against warping and providing a better food grip. However, in most contexts, more luxury materials have been seen as ideal. While ivory, jade, coral, brass, and agate all have a good reputation amongst the upper classes, it is silver that has traditionally been seen as top tier. While not always as expensive as these other materials, silver has a special superpower. You see, unlike most other metals, it corrodes and turns black when it comes into contact with arsenic. As a result, there are multiple recorded points in history where these chopsticks saved diners from being poisoned. And while silver has its limits, after all, there are many other types of poison that silver does not react to. Silver sets have and continue to be revered by many Asian elites. However, as the modern world changes, so does the chopsticks game. For example, in 2022, Japanese food and beverage company Kirin Holdings and researchers at Meiji University developed a wearable device connected to a chopstick that uses an electric current to simulate food tasting salty. This device is so powerful that it can make food taste 1.5 times saltier, therefore eliminating the need to put large amounts of unhealthy soy sauce on rice, sushi, and other Japanese dishes. Therefore, we think it's fair to say that chopsticks will continue to evolve and become more advanced far into the future. Now we bounce it back to you. Are you an avid chopsticks user? And what material or style is your favorite? Let us know in the comments section down below. And of course, if you'd like more videos about the most amazing forgotten parts of our history, be sure to subscribe to the Intrigued Mind channel, like the video, and leave your suggestions in the comments below.